Hi guys, hope you're well. So today I want to introduce James. A lot of you guys have been asking me for testimonials of people who've healed from visual snow, DPDR, tinnitus, panic attacks, you name it. And James was actually one of the first original clients that I had to take through the Two Paths program, and he's got a really interesting story to share. Pretty much very similar to mine as well, in terms of he came to be in a very kind of desperate situation, suffering from a wide variety of different symptoms. Um, Super cool guy. He's actually joined our team at Two Paths recently, so you'll probably be seeing a lot more of him. He's become part of the Two Paths family, and he's now going to be helping me with videos on the Two Paths Recovery Academy, which is something that I want you guys to check out. It's new, and we've been doing a lot of work on it this year. And James is going to be helping me out with that, as well as helping me support some of my clients as well. James has been studying in functional medicine, similar to myself, so is aware of the different procedures and techniques that we use at Two Paths. And yeah, I just want to, as I said, introduce him and let him tell you his story, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to resonate with. It seems to follow a very similar path with all of us. That's how you guys found me. So I'll hand it over to James.
Mm.
James, hi. Do you want to tell us a little bit
Oh,
about yourself, a bit of background, and introduce yourself to the Two Paths community?
sure. Yeah. So I'm James, and I yeah, I am a professor and been a small business owner, and that's the kind of stuff I was up to when I was hit with this insane madness. I've been calling it torture. And what seemed to catalyze it was withdrawal from a sleeping medication, but I mean, there were probably a few things piled up there, but that was the tipping point anyway. Um,
James, when you
and
when you when you came to
mm,
me, you were on, was it clonazepam? I remember, or you were on
yeah, well,
a multitude of different. It was
yeah,
you.
well, when your nervous system ends up completely dysfunctional, as you well know, then the only thing that is offered to you uh, by the sick care system, by the standard care system, is uh is something that'll numb the symptoms. There's not much by way of true recovery or rebuilding body systems, fixing your hormones or your gut, or your stabilizing your nervous system. It's just like, let's mask the symptoms. And for some people, I don't know, maybe a fraction of a pill or something might help for a little while, or whatever. But I had no interest ever in life, really, ever had any interest in being on heavy anti-epileptics or whatever for the rest of my life. So when you're being tortured because some body systems are out of alignment, etc. I mean, you're desperate. So, doctor says, well, here, take this. You're like, sure, give me anything. I remember, the only time I'd ever been sick before this, was when I had kidney stones. And those are painful, right? And I remember going to the hospital, kidney stones, and that was it. That's like the only, major condition I've ever had in my life. When you have that much pain going on, you're like, yeah, just do anything. I didn't know what it was at first. I was like, rip it out, like, give me a pill. I don't care what you have to do. Just make the pain go away. And, I found myself, I think many people do probably, if they're listening to this, found myself in a similar situation, but, just a very different kind of pain, and a very persistent one, as you know as well, right? It just goes on, and there's no explanation. There's no solution. There's just this sort of tumbleweed of grotesque torture.
James,
And
how did it originate? Like, when did your first symptoms start? Was it like, do you want to tell the audience
yeah,
about like how it first started for you?
yeah. I mean, I mean, and to preface this, like I have lived a very healthy, happy life, high performer, high achievement kind of person. Like,
You
you
went to
know,
Cambridge, of all places,
I did go to Cambridge. Yeah.
which is like the
Yeah.
Harvard of the UK. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Right. You know, and for the years since then, you know, I've been working very hard. You know, I enjoy life. I enjoyed, you know, life. I also sing, you know, I had a business, etc. Like I just enjoyed life. I enjoyed these things. And I could do these things. But you know, when you're suddenly, yeah, so to your question, you know, COVID hit. I had a relationship that wound up. I mean, these are things that you know, that cause some kind of difficulty for everybody. But you know, the way the way I dealt with it at the time, with the limited tools I had available, right? I was living at the time, at least part time, in a cottage. I have a cottage 2 hours north of major city here in Canada called Winnipeg. And you know, I was at the cottage and I was stuck there, you know, for oh my god, like about 8 months, you know, and you know, there was a kind of a desperation that set in. I couldn't sleep for a little while, so I went to the doctor and I said, you know, is there something that you know, that could you could just help me sleep to get through this sort of weird, you know, situation in life where I'm kind of locked into my cottage. There's nobody around and I can't sleep and I'm just going stir crazy. And the doctor's like, sure, I'll give you this pill. It's very safe. Anybody can take it. Happened to be trazodone, and which is a serotonergic sleeping medication. And I thought, well, great, you know, that's a nice simple solution. I'll take it just for the time I'm kind of locked away here, and then I'll get off of it when the world opens up again and I can just sort of function normally, you know. And I kind of did exactly that. You know, I didn't like doing it. I've never done something like that in the past. I've never been on any, you know, medications or anything. My system doesn't like medications. I've discovered in general, it kind of seems to perceive them as a toxin and fights them off and so on. But um, which is probably true for a lot of people, by the way, right? But we're not in tune with these sensations. And so yeah, 8 months, whatever, more than that. I think like a year goes by, and I'm like, okay, A, I have to get out of here, and B, I have to get off this drug because this is just you know, peculiar kind of prison. And so I did that. I stopped it. And I remember the moment I was driving across the country. You know, Canada's got these huge land masses, right? And to get to the next nearest city was where my family was in, well, not next nearest. It's one province over, and it's near. You know, most people be familiar with Toronto, and then just little hop skip from there is Ottawa. So I'm driving to Ottawa from Winnipeg. It's about a 30-hour drive, and as I'm driving, uh, you know, I start to get these weird sensations, and you know, my vision starts to go funny. I remember everything getting really bright and really detailed, and then you know, I started to see sort of like static, and I was like, whoa, this is really awful. But you know, my my willpower and my, you know, rational brain kicks in and goes like, don't worry about it, it's just, you know, it's just temporary. You just need to sort of like let these awful things pass, and then the withdrawal will be gone and you'll be fine. And I got to Ottawa, and i I literally collapsed on the floor of my parents' house because I was in such weird, like I couldn't feel my limbs properly, my vision was messed up, I couldn't breathe properly. um and you know, my parents were like, they didn't know what they were responding to. They'd never seen me like this before, so they were like, you know, okay, you must have had a hard time, you know, at your house, and you know, like locked in there forever, and you know, this must have been a terrible time. And I'm like, well, yeah, it was, but something else is going something else is
yeah.
going on now. And you know, and I kind of locked myself in a bedroom and tried to take, you know, other, I don't know, drink good teas, and you know, I don't know, like anything that was kind of mildly sedative to just sort of like numb my this atrocious pain. Start socializing with people if and when the world had been open up enough to socialize, and then and then realize that I can't relate to other humans anymore because I'm like, having a completely different experience. You know, and I'd be like, hey, like just put it out of your brain and kind of get over it. But there's no getting over that. No, eventually, I think, I don't know what it was, like about a month later, and I was like, oh my God, like, is this life forever now?
Yeah.
um and that began the
Mm.
most bizarre, like, years even long, you know um slippery slope of, like, going to professionals, having them tell you that, well, you must have gone nuts, so we don't know what to do except give you a drug that tranquilizes you. And I was like, no, I like, because I know what's going on. I feel these things. I can think clearly, but I just, like, it feels like I'm on fire. Like, I need, like, something is wrong. It's like my fingers have been cut off. Help me, Um, and
And you
just
you
there's
got
just
you got all the eye tests done. You got everything done, right? Like everybody else does. Did you get all that? You went through the
well,
whole.
eventually, but the problem in Canada was, first of all, I'll say as politely as possible that this system here, I know, helps a lot of people, and people need hip replacements and all those kinds of things, fine. Otherwise is so absolutely dysfunctional that people are made to be desperate for no reason whatsoever.
Mhm.
um and and I mean, again, like, I'm not like I can do my own research. I don't want to be that person, right? I don't want to be the person that's like Googling, or now it's, using AI to try to figure out every single symptom. I wanted to trust medical professionals, but the problem was, the more I trusted them, the worse I got. And then my colleagues start to go, like, what's wrong with James? My family, what's wrong with this guy? Like, I don't know. I'd love to know, right? So your question about diagnostics was, no, like, we didn't have access to the right diagnostics, and furthermore, because it was COVID, the hospital system, the medical system here was so disinterested in what was happening to many people, not just me. I mean, people who had cancer, right, were dying more frequently than usual, because the system was so distracted. It's like a focusing illusion. It's like there's one thing, there's one problem, we can't fix anything else. And so I just got worse and worse and worse and worse, and was given these terrible drugs. And every time I was put on some kind of a drug, and of course I'm willing to test it because I'm like, this professional says it's the right thing to do. The drug would do some other damage, or some other symptom would show up, or I'd have no energy, and I'd have to lay down for hours or days at a time.
Yeah.
I remember, like, I remember weeks. This is probably well, it was months and years, right, until I finally talked to you. I found your videos, and you were naming the symptoms that I was experiencing, and I was going, like, wait a second, not even the professionals I've been talking to have no clue about this. How come you, how come you have an understanding of this symptom set? And until then, I'd largely been lying in a bed listening to audiobooks just so I'd have something to focus my attention on, because I couldn't even stand looking at the sky. I couldn't see fine details. I couldn't watch movies or
Yeah.
anything because it was so overwhelming.
Yeah, so
Um,
I think that the one of the issues that a lot of clients and a lot of people that come to me with visual snow is I mean, they go speak to their family and friends, and they're like, oh, I'm seeing dots, I'm seeing, and from the outside, right, your family and friends are like, that doesn't sound too serious. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right.
but then
Yeah. Yeah.
they don't realize like how frustrating it is. I mean, let's say you injure your leg, or you do something to your leg, etc. You can rest the leg, or you can rest parts of your body, but
Right.
when you wake up and you literally have all this noise happening in your visual field, right, you can't switch
Oh,
that off. And even when you go to
no.
sleep, it's never switched off. It is like torture when you first get
Torture.
it. When you first get it, it is like that, because you don't understand what's happening to you.
Yeah.
It literally is like drives you crazy.
Yeah.
And other people who've not been through it just don't understand, because they're like, oh, but you can still see. So
Yes.
what's the issue? You can see
Yeah.
me. What's going on? But they don't realize it's literally like the best way I could explain it is like it's just like it's like a computer virus, right? Like that's what it
Yeah.
is. It's like your brain like has a virus, and it literally is little pop-up screens are popping up everywhere, and you're just having to deal with that 24 hours a day, consistently on a loop. And
Yeah.
when you first experience that, it's absolutely terrifying. It really is. It is
Yeah.
because you are the thoughts go through your head like, am I going to deal with this forever? Like you said,
Yeah.
and that's the first thing that go because, and that's why a lot of people do become, I don't know about you, but very very suicidal because they start to realize that they start to think that if this is forever, if this is now a feature, not a bug, let's say, then I'm screwed.
Right. Yeah. And
So yeah.
I think people don't understand as well. Well, first of all, there's one thing you said about it. Well, you can still see, so you must be fine. I actually got a letter from the government when I tried to get a tax credit, just so because I've been spending all this money trying to like reclaim my health because the hospital system won't do anything. So I got to like go to different countries or like private clinics and just throw crap at the wall to see what
Mhm.
sticks. And and I submitted, the government said that well, I'm spent this money, so there must be some tax benefit. There's supposed to be. And they literally got a letter back saying like exactly what you said, like, well, you can probably still see, so I think you're fine. And it's it's like there's no, you get this invalidation from the system, then this invalidation after spending your life savings to try and like get back to life because you don't want to be in a state of desperation, or you said suicidal, like,
Well,
but
well,
you're so out of control, like in pain,
yeah,
that the suicidality, the concern about living with this, it's a rational response to that
of
much pain.
course, of course.
It's
It's great. I mean,
yeah.
I had a situation where I went to an optometrist, and the optometrist had a young girl assistant, I think. And I was trying to explain this to the optometrist, and she did all the tests, right? And
Yeah.
and then I'm trying to explain it to this young girl as well. And I think she was like an intern or something, just training. And she literally looked at me and she went, "God, you see dots all the time?" I was like,
Yes.
"Yep." She goes,
Yeah.
"How do you live like that?" And I was like, I was like, "This is not the type of feedback I need right now." And
No, right.
that was the optometrist assistant saying that to me. She couldn't understand like how I
Right.
could live like that. So anyway, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you realize that the thing is, as I always say through my videos, right? A lot of these doctors, I mean, it's not their fault, right? Like they do have sometimes good intentions. It's just that
Yeah.
their toolkit is very basic.
So
They're,
limited.
they're not trained in the right things. They usually just
No.
focus on one part of the body. So if they're looking at the eyes, they're not looking at the brain. They're not looking at the rest of the body or the immune system or the gut or any of these things. They're just
Right.
focused on one little area, and you can't diagnose and treat somebody if you only focusing on one part of the body. As you said,
Yeah.
like if you're doing an operation or you're replacing a hip, then fair enough. But if you're actually
Fair enough.
working
Yeah.
on a whole body system, it's impossible, right? So yeah, I mean,
Impossible.
and
Yeah.
it sounds like Canada is the same as the UK, that's the same as the US, and all
Yeah.
these people. And as I said, like talk about it a lot. These people are just there to prescribe drugs, and they're no
Yeah.
more than drug dealers. That's basically what they do.
Sadly. Yeah. I mean,
And
and you become well acquainted with this practice when you're in and out of different specialist offices, or different doctors, and and all they can really say, all they habitually say or offer is, well, help, try this drug, try this drug, try this drug, try
yeah,
this drug.
yeah.
And by the
You,
10th drug or
you,
whatever, you're like, well, this is not a working strategy for me at all.
Well,
No.
you know what I kind of want to say. I want people to tell them when they say try this. I want to say no. You try it first. You do it for a
Yeah,
couple of weeks,
okay.
right? See how your side
Yeah,
effects are, and then let me
yeah.
know, man. If it's good, I'll take it. But how many of
Well,
them were willing to try their own drugs? Not many.
no.
So
Well,
anyway,
and the other,
yeah,
yeah. No, well, the other funny thing I'll say is that so you're trying these drugs, and then along with each drug has to come also some kind of bullshit diagnosis,
yeah,
right? So you get a diagnosis, and then you're freaking out because you're already sick, and then you've got this new diagnosis, and you have the diagnoses pile up too, and they're all kind of bullshit, but they're all on your record now. And
yeah,
and so you're trying to disentangle truth from fact from fiction, and there's more fiction, and it's just a really hard awakening to realize that years later, after you've put so much time and faith in the system to do something to make you even mildly more comfortable. So
okay.
yeah.
So anyway, moving on. We realized
Yeah.
you went through the same path as a lot of people went through. You went to your doctors, and then you realized they are absolutely useless for this. They tried to put you on a lot of pills, which you thought,
Yeah.
obviously, in that situation, you think, okay, a pill would be nice. If it can make this go away, I'll take anything that you you give me, right? And that's
Sure.
why we start to take these things.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
then obviously then you started to develop more symptoms, I'm guessing, and
Yep.
things started to get worse. So you want to continue on the story?
Yeah. I mean, well, okay, so you mentioned at one point you're like, well, sometimes a family or the system will say, well, you probably just need to rest and maybe it'll just, heal by itself or something. And unfortunately, in this particular set of symptoms do not respond to rest. Some rest, yeah, absolutely got to slow down and, but you also have to, unfortunately, take responsibility and put some work in. So when I found you, it was sort of a turning point for figuring out what kind of work was the right work, right? Because just going about your daily life and going back to the gym or whatever, some of these things will in fact make you worse. There's
Of
sort of a
course, yeah,
so you have to sort of as we started to work at, as you say, do things in the right order, figure out how you can level up as many of your body systems as possible with the right kind of effort, the right amount of effort, the right kind of work, to kind of unlock, levels up. And it's funny that we're like using technological analogies for this, but it's
hmm
true, right? Like,
hmm
you lock level one, you unlock level two, you unlock level three, and eventually you're well enough that you can at least function, if not feel comfortable, start to experience joy again. These things do somehow, emerge just by leveling up each of these fundamental body systems. And then from there, I mean, you can start tinkering with optimizing, whatever's left. And that's kind of where I'm at, I suppose, now. But certainly, those steps that we'd taken over months, to try and you know move some symptoms along, mute, work at them so that they can be muted, so that you're not focusing on them and so on. That's just
yeah.
there's no shortcuts, and there's a lot of work that has to be put in. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so in terms of like, I remember when you first came to me, we first had to get you off all the medication you were on. So we did
Yeah.
some. I remember we did some water tapers, and that was a pretty rough ride for you because
Yeah.
when you're on a lot of medication, you don't know what's causing the symptoms. Is it the medication? Is it the withdrawal? Is it your actual
Yeah.
symptoms? Like, is it your own body? So you're kind of
Yeah.
in that like confused area. And this
Yeah.
is why, like, I often say to people, like, if they're coming to me, a lot of them do come, and they are on various different medications. The first thing we need to do is get you to a baseline where we're just working
Yeah.
with your natural system. We're not working with the side effects from any medications, because some of these benzos, etc. I
Yeah.
mean, I went through my own hell.
Yeah.
I literally was suicidal, you know,
Yeah.
constantly. Like, it was
How can you not
unbelievable.
be? Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what I realized is when I actually came off the medications, the suicidal
Yeah.
thoughts went, right? And I thought,
Yeah.
it's that impulse that it was giving you, and you just realize, and then you look at the side of the box and it says, suicidal
Yeah.
thoughts,
You see
a
every symptom
part
ever.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this is what, like, when I went through it, and my stories, I've got it there, so I won't go into too much detail. But you firstly,
Yeah.
you have to differentiate between, the medication somebody's on and their symptoms. So we got you clean, let's say,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
a challenge, to start with. And then, as you said, like, a lot of people, um, you know, in your position, will be jumping from doctor to doctor, protocol to protocol, trying to find
Yeah.
all these different areas. Okay, let's go exercise. Let's do some meditation here. Let's do some vagus nerve here.
Yeah.
Let's do some detoxing here. And it's like that attitude of let's do more, 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 right? And the body
Yeah.
doesn't respond to that. And that's one of the things
No.
that we had to get you onto the program so that you understood that, you know, it was the immune system, nervous system, it
Mm-hmm.
responds to gentle pushing, right? You need to
Mm-hmm.
do things very slowly, add things very slowly, take things away very slowly. And that's what we did. Is we started to, it's almost like building a house. We had to start at, the foundations, build those
Yeah.
foundations again. So your reactions to, the things that you were taking, the procedures that you were doing on the program wouldn't be too
Hmm.
intense. And then we had to kind of tinker and tweak those reactions because, as I always say, everybody's healing journey is different.
Hmm.
We always work with, I mean, there is some core stuff that we do, but we always, customize things. Like, obviously, you remember we had some women in the group when we first started, right? That their treatment
Yeah.
plans were slightly different to yours because, we're dealing
Yeah.
with estrogen, we're dealing with time of the month, we're dealing with a whole other set of issues
Yeah.
that are different. But, I think gradually, I don't know if you want to just kind of touch on it, like, it was literally like starting again, right? Going back to basics. I think that is the thing that we have to do with most people is
Yeah.
because you're
Well,
so
I mean,
confused with what doctors have told you. They've told you this. You're going online, you're going to Reddit, you're trying to find all these solutions, right? And you just
yeah.
need, sometimes you just need to be brought back to yourself and be, brought back to a sense of calm. And okay, let's start again. Let's clean the slate and start again. I think that's where we started, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So there was the, I've talked about the medications already, but the net result of all these medications was to further destabilize the nervous system and destroy the gut and all these kinds of things that don't help, right? So actually, and so we had to start there, and moreover, I mean, I was working the energy that I had to expend on daily life was focused completely on my work commitments, which is to say that I needed to keep working to make sure that I could continue to just do life and pay for things and whatever. But that meant that the most basic things, relating to other people, preparing food for myself, cleaning, those kinds of things became really, really hard for a while. So the first step beyond, getting these toxins out of my body was to get nourished again. And I think that was the very first thing we started to do, was figure out how we can get nourished and make sure the gut's actually absorbing nutrients. And yeah, it was like the most basic stuff, the most basic stuff that otherwise I would probably never have been forced to think about, and which I was
Well,
probably in denial a little bit about too, because I thought, no, I can kind of function enough to do
yeah.
life. I'm just in pain all the time. But we had to work at that, at the beginning, and I needed
I,
the encouragement too. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, as I said, Hippocrates said that all healing begins in the gut, and that
Yeah.
is the start of everything that we work on. And Western diets, especially UK, US, Canada, it's not
Yeah.
not too much different. I keep saying, and it was only until I was doing the work on myself that I realized that, and you did as well, that we are festering pits of
Yeah.
toxicity,
Yeah.
and people are just walking around and they don't have a clue what's going on
No.
inside them. They have pathogens, viruses that are going to be activated. They have overview of parasites, candida, mold, Lyme,
Yeah.
you name it, right? And
Yeah.
whether it's by design, whether it's just poor diets, toxins in the atmosphere, all this kind of, whether it's actually been done by design, like we won't go into that right now, but
Yeah.
we are literally the amount of stuff that we harbor inside us, that, and you found out to your amazement when we went through the
Yeah.
process, it's just incredible, isn't it? And I
Yeah.
had
And
to go through that as well. And it's only when you actually start seeing this stuff and you start realizing it, and you start to realize that everything that causes problems in your body is
Mhm.
already inside you, right? You don't
Yeah.
get it from
Yeah.
outside, it's already inside you. So whatever, there's a phrase that's like cancer, you don't catch cancer. Cancer is already inside you. It's what makes it come
Yeah.
out. And I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest realization that I have and I had, and is that my clients start to have as well. I
What was
think, would you
crazy for
agree?
me too is, well, I also thought of myself prior to that. I was relatively active. I thought that I ate well enough, and I did according to the fad diets out there. But I couldn't have fathomed how how much junk there was in my body, even with the effort I was already putting in according to conventional norms. Right, like
Hmm.
it's I think people who think of themselves as being relatively healthy can also still be really sick because their energy is simply in the wrong, being placed in the wrong things, put in the wrong direction.
Well,
Um,
you see all these athletes. I mean, I don't know if you've seen
uh,
saying that, but I mean, every news story, everything. I mean, you see athletes, footballers now just passing away, and these people,
oh yeah,
it's
there's this. Yeah,
their life to be healthy. Like their whole
yes,
life is based around eating right, whatever. And
yeah,
this is just the world we live in, right? Like just
yeah,
going for a jog and having a few smoothies and trying to keep your stress level.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
enough right now. Maybe it was all right for
yeah.
our parents' generation, their generation, right? But
Right.
our guts,
Yeah,
and I mean, you look at the young people now, and we have a lot of people come to the program who are like 19, 20, and in their teens,
yeah.
and they're suffering from unbelievably crazy symptoms. And
A
this
lot of them
is
been
this
being medicated, right?
yeah,
So yeah,
exactly. It's been medicated,
yeah,
but it's just, as I said, we're just living in a very, very toxic world. And,
yeah,
in terms of what we do with two paths, I mean, the first thing, the what I always call it is a cellular mass
yeah,
detoxification program. And
yeah,
I firmly believe that, every generation is just getting more and more toxic. And that's why you're
oh yeah,
seeing
yeah,
autism on the rise, you're seeing turbo cancers on the rise, right? And
yeah.
it's not enough to go to the gym and, hope for the best. It's really
No,
not. You need to put the
no,
work in. As you do, and for people like me and you from a similar age, it just hits
yeah,
us. But
yeah.
it took a longer. But what I'm seeing now is younger people. They're not even
Starting
having
earlier.
starting earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah, they really
yeah,
are. So yeah, so back to your story. So we started on the detoxification. We got you off the medication. Like, how
yeah.
did it feel coming off the meds? Or how
Well,
did it feel
like,
to to have somebody speak to you about who knew had been through it and also coming off the meds and kind of yeah.
well, that was incredibly validating because I mean, I don't know if it's possible to articulate, aside from your own experience, the level of loneliness that you feel, when you're even abandoned by your own self, right? Like the people around you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea really what's going on. The doctors don't know what's going on. You are so on your you're floating on an iceberg in the middle of the ocean, right? And so to have somebody who's been like, oh yeah, I did this and I'm better now, is like, what, like, no way, because I'm on an iceberg. There's no way that. So it's a little bit of like, almost like denial at first until you start to do things, and there's a lot of faith that you end up putting in, that you've misguidedly put in professionals already, that you then put in, in this case you, or somebody who's, like you, who's been through the war already. And you have to operate on that basis, because you don't really have a choice at that point. You've tried everything else. So it's very validating, and hopeful, and even, there were some of these other folks that were on the call sometimes, just hearing them talk about their experience was excellent, because you also feel like this particular set of symptoms must be so strange as to be like, it's almost like people make it a moral failure of yours to have wound up in this situation, right? Like, oh, you must be a little odd and that's why you're in this situation. It's like, I've had enough of that. So for somebody to say like, actually no, you're simply, your nervous system is destabilized and you're full of toxins, etc., try that first. It's like, oh, that makes sense. Um,
I,
so um,
I always say, like, it's a very simple, like, I mean, the resolution is, it takes time and steps and you have to do things in the right order, but
yeah,
the fundamental thing that we're trying to do is cleanse, right? That's what we're trying to
yeah,
do. I always say, like, our bodies have become like a overflowing toilet and you need to just cleanse, and
yeah,
once you start to cleanse, and everything ties into that. So the energy work, the nervous system work, the detoxing, the mental work, it
nourishing,
all, the
yeah,
nourishing, it all
yeah,
comes together and it all works together.
yeah,
And that's the beauty of the program. What we do is we do it in the right order, and
yeah.
we hit off every point. So yeah, back to your story. So just tell me a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people are going to be interested in that. I went through my own issues, because you are right? People just family, friends.
They
I
have no
mean,
idea what to think.
the thing is,
They
right?
have no idea.
The thing is, though, I mean, coming through the other end, right?
Yeah.
We talk about toxins, but you do realize that it is a good filter for new people in your life, and that's the thing that
Well, yeah.
I realized is that there were people in my life that were just not beneficial. Like the toxins in my system, they were
Yeah.
toxic
Right.
in terms of energy. And
Right.
sometimes, whether it's based on how spiritual you are, some people, I firmly believe people go through this because they need to be awakened at some point, and that coming through the other end and being awakened. So tell me a little bit about that. Did that, like where you're at right now, where you don't have visual snow, you're some of your you have a couple of things that you've got going on, I know,
Yeah.
but in terms of like where you are
Yeah.
now, like do you want to just like more so on, because that's a very important part, I think, is because a lot of people come to me and they have their parents or whatever, and luck some in some cases they do have people
Yeah.
that support them, but I've dealt
Yes.
with so many people who've partners have left them, family have
Oh
just
yeah.
ditched them, work has
Yeah.
thought they're crazy, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's even worse than the actual symptoms that you're suffering from, because these are people that
Yeah.
you're supposed to care for you, and they just
Right.
absolutely ditch you. So what do you
Well,
want to do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
yeah, yeah. I mean, what that so okay, so I'll say prior to this madness, I think we all have to survive a little bit on, on on this notion of having a positive reputation, of being competent and so on. And I had a lot of my ego invested
Yeah.
in that stuff. Like I was very competent. I take on more, a lot and try to over deliver. And, and so people sort of knew me as that. And when I couldn't do that, like
Hmm.
functionally, people stepped away very fast. And because I was in a circle of a lot of high performers, you know, they were the first ones to step away and go like, "Ooh, uh, I don't want to be around that," um, and and what's fascinating about that, I mean, that was a wild enlightenment, I'd say, because I think we tend to believe, or we ought to believe, we need to believe, that the people around us, regardless of, I don't know what kind of ego they have or whatever, is like, they're your friends or they're your people and they got you. And that's not true. Sadly, for a lot of us who ended up in this sort of a situation, I'm not saying that everybody goes, but you end up with a very thin circle of people who are there purely because they want to support you, not because of anything else, not because of your output or how much you've promised in the past or how much you've performed or whatever, right? It's not on the basis of your competence. Um, but the other thing that was a wild awakening was that um, we were living through this time. I don't know how to say this quite so. I'm trying to be politically astute, perhaps, as I say this, but you were living through this time in which there are a lot of proclamations about kindness and empathy and goodness, and we want to live in a good society and yada yada yada. Um, and the rudest awakening to me was that precisely the people who seemed to have the greatest investment in that kind of approach to life were the first to ditch.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, what what weird part of the matrix am I in where the ones who are the most evangelical about this, goodness, are kind of the first to leave. And so that was a very interesting flip, in terms of my awareness about how people function in the world, because I don't think I'd ever had to pay attention to that before. I would just take people's proclamations at face value and go like, oh yeah, well then, you say it. So obviously, I mean, I was just kind of naive. I was like, oh yeah, well you say that, so you obviously must be a
I
really great
think
human.
as you said, like it's like people don't want to be around it. That's what it is,
No,
right? Like that's the thing.
no.
It's like it's almost they feel like they're gonna catch it or something, right? They don't
Yeah,
want to be
yeah.
around.
It might.
They don't want to be
Yeah,
around
yeah,
it,
yeah.
which is frustrating.
But
Yeah.
but then but then the flip side of it also is then the kind of work that we're doing,
Mhm.
like that stuff, like it's hard to look at, like when people are in a vulnerable position, or if someone's maimed or whatever, these kinds of things, right? It is hard to be around. But on the other side of it, I mean, now folks like you and I, like speaking personally at least, I need to be I feel called to, at least on some level, be helping people who
Hmm.
are in this situation, because I know damn well nobody else is going to show up,
Oh,
or
100%.
very few will, so it's interesting how it also makes you reach out a little bit more in ways that you maybe wouldn't otherwise, more empathetic and in the right ways,
Yeah.
so
I,
yeah,
I
so I
think
think
for
it's
me, a lot of people who heal probably move on with their lives, etc. I think for me, it was the anger that that
yeah,
motivated
of
me.
course, yeah,
And people say anger is not a motivation, but it is sometimes, right?
well,
And it was
yeah,
the anger of people, jumping out of my life. It was the anger of what the doctors did to
yeah,
me, prescribing me all sorts of pills, telling me I had multiple sclerosis, putting me on this roller coaster.
yeah.
Yeah.
I had
So
the
it
MS
was
one
the
too, yeah.
yeah, it was yeah, it was the anger, and it was like, okay, you know what? Whatever I do in life, right? I'm not going to let this
Mhm.
lie. I'm not going to be one of these
No.
people that if I get better, right, I'm coming for you. Well, not in that sense,
Yeah,
but you know what I mean. Like
yeah.
I want to highlight the incompetence of these absolute fucking morons.
Yeah,
So I
it's a deep injustice,
yeah.
right? So, yeah,
So
yeah,
so that's what motivated me, and people
yeah.
need their motivations, but and money was never a motivator for me, like doing
Me
this
neither.
healing program, etc. Like, as I said, like I already made money in a previous life, and
Yeah,
I went a million miles an hour doing the kind of jobs
yeah.
that I did, and it was that drive for money and ambition and all that probably got me into this situation in the first
Well,
place. Like
yeah,
I was traveling, I was
yeah,
living high achievers, and we're all part of the same set. And we just we don't know when to stop, right? We're always like, next year I'm going to take care of myself. We keep pushing and pushing and pushing. But my whole
yep,
thing with two paths has been is understanding that where people are coming from. It's not a visible issue that you have, so people don't really empathize with what you're going through because they can't see it. Like
no,
it's not
just
something
yeah,
visible. And the lack
yeah,
of understanding from doctors and the visual snow initiative, but let's not go into those guys. Like, I've done a couple of videos on those, but I just started
yeah,
to realize that there's not much help for these kind of neurological symptoms, and people just have to live with them, and
mhm,
that angers me,
yeah,
and that's why I started this. It was born out of anger, and the
yeah,
reality is yes, the benefits of helping people is great. Like I love those stories, and I want testimonials like yourself to come through, etc. But
yeah,
what we're seeing now with what happened, you talked about COVID, and you see what happened with RFK coming out and all the kind of stuff that's coming out now, all the stuff that we learn about Fauci and stuff. And you realize
yeah,
these viruses are made in labs and they're made even more potent. And you realize that
yeah,
how the hell have we been living in a society like this where these so-called doctors we've been, literally putting
yeah,
up to God level,
yeah,
when, they have no interest in helping their patients a lot of the time. So,
mhm,
I think it's weird how this all happened as well during COVID. What happened to
yeah,
you? It's like a big awakening has happened, and people are just waking up to the bullshit. And I think
yeah,
that's where we're at. So tell me, James, like obviously went through that.
mhm,
You found people, and then I remember you slowly but surely started to get better. And how did
mhm,
it feel to like start to learn about your body, start to understand yourself? Because I think that's a big part of the program,
mhm,
right? It's understanding yourself,
yeah,
right? Like rather than trying to find the solution outside, right? I was only
yeah,
pointing you in the right direction, right? Like
yeah,
I was giving you some pointers, but in the end it was your own immune system, it was your own body that started to heal. So tell us a little bit
yeah.
about that. Like how was that transformation for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that is a transformation that will never quite end now,
Hmm.
because, because in some sense it's simpler than you think, and in other ways it's more complex than you think. Right? Like to have insight into, things like your immune system or your gut, or and to work through it in a real dedicated trial and error way, teaches you a hell of a lot about your own body, and about um well, and about the human body in general. So, yeah, like, that's and those are lessons that, like, you learn that stick with you forever.
Hmm.
um and and then on the other side of things is like there's a deep mystery in that as well, because it's not what you're taught, it's not what the systems are set up to help you with. We have more, it's like we have more data than ever, and some of that data is useful, but some of it's like, some of it's practice, some of it's ancient, maybe.
It's also where you're getting the data from. Often
Yeah.
people will come onto the program and they'll be like, okay, some of your procedures and some of your steps, I go on the net and it says it's dangerous or it's this and that, and then you
Yeah.
realize
Oh man.
you realize that it's the pharmaceutical companies that are trying to confuse everybody. So they're paying for these articles to go
Yeah.
out on the net and try to confuse you, right? They're trying to confuse you
Yeah.
into thinking that actually, you know what? Maybe sugar isn't a bad thing, or maybe
Yeah.
maybe like all
Right.
these, and it's that
Maybe
confusion.
the COVID shot's a great idea. Yeah,
Maybe
I
the
know,
COVID
right? But
yeah, exactly. It's just that it's when you're confused,
do
right?
I have to do I have to not say that so you can put this on the web? Anyway, yeah, but
You're
it's,
abs no, I think we're good now. I think we're good.
okay.
We don't have to conform to that bullshit anymore, thank God.
And
um
I say that without trying to be super. I mean, neither of us, right?
yeah.
But I'm not trying to be super ideological about it either. But it's like, it's just, yeah. I think there's a kind of, is it common sense or is it uncommon sense that, where, we have enough information that's coming to light. I think the greatest danger that we make as a society, like, aside from the COVID shot, the greatest danger we make is in thinking that the quickest solutions are the best, or the most technocratic solutions are the best, right? And then 5 years pass and we go like, oh, actually, it's the opposite. Actually, the food pyramid needs to be inverted. Oh,
Mhm.
actually, mRNA might not be the best thing in every circumstance. Or, oh, actually, da 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 da. And also that, like, every human body is also unique, and so you can't possibly take one size fits all,
This is
and
why, yeah, this is why I always say when people come to the channel or message me, and they're like, okay, just give me some tips. And YouTube's obviously a place where you can try to get a little bit of information together, but
yeah,
it's like anything on YouTube, right? You take little bits from here, little bits from there.
yeah,
It's not really a plan. It's more of a random stuff, and you're just kind of trying things. But
yeah.
what I realized very quickly, and that's like over the last 2 years of treating patients, is
Everyone's
has
different.
everyone's different. And what we did, if you remember, we tried different things and we saw how your body reacted. Then we had to
Yeah,
tweak it slightly, right? And then we saw how your immune system was reacting to that, how you were detoxing. There's a lot of work that goes into this. It's not as simple as,
well,
just do these steps and that's it, you're going to be healed. Because if it was that simple, right, the body would,
yeah.
people would be healing left, right, and center. And I think
Well, and it also, no, I was just gonna say that, like, also that, so not only is it, pardon me, it's not one size fits all, but it's also that people whose nervous systems are super destabilized from this toxic load,
Mhm.
um, you know, um, need to approach solutions a little bit more gently. So it's not one size fits all. It's a lot of trial and error, and also your system's super sensitized because of all the crap that's gone on inside of it already. And whether or not someone's more vulnerable to that or not is kind of beside the point. Maybe, but also maybe you're just more full of crap, and a jab like that's just another layer of crap that you're adding to your body, so that has to
Absolutely.
has to fight off. So yeah, yeah,
I think also we live in a world, and I talked about this in previous videos, where people just want very quick solutions, in terms of
yeah,
anything, right? And this is
right,
what really frustrates me, because it's like you just quick on YouTube. It's like 3 steps to get rich, 3 steps to get a perfect relationship, 3 steps to health, and
yeah,
it's like, who the hell is making this stuff? And it's like it
yeah,
just and you see all these billionaires that have like supplement companies. I'm like, are you
right,
mad? It's like I
yeah,
like one supplement is just gonna cure you of all your ailments. It's like it's
sure,
mental,
yeah,
and
yeah,
we just live in this like economy now where people just don't want to put in the hard work, and that's the
yeah,
reality. And I don't lie to my clients. Like when we start, and this is what you're going to find out as well when you work with us, is
mhm,
when we you know, I mean, you have worked with a couple of clients, right? Like you worked
Oh
with,
yeah, yeah.
you worked on a, and this is what I often tell people. It's not an easy job.
No, yeah,
You are taking the energy of people, and especially if you believe in that, right? It takes a
yeah,
lot to
yeah,
deal, even over the remotely or whatever, to deal with a person who's in a very desperate state. That
yeah,
energy can often impound to you. And when I'm dealing with my clients, I have to be very careful that I'm not taking on, you know,
yeah.
all that energy as well. So
Absolutely.
you have to take care of yourself, and I think you found that out a little bit, right? Like if you want to, when
Yeah, I worked.
when you kind of healed, and then you kind of wanted to do the same, you kind of just started supporting a couple of patients, but I think you felt that
Yeah.
it can you have to take time, right? You have to take there has to be a bit of a gap.
Yeah, I dove in really hard to that as soon as I felt like I was I was barely well enough, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna like start doing this,
Mhm.
as much as I can on the side. And I worked with a clinic in the States, and I was basically working one on one with patients. There were other professionals there. There were doctors and so on, but I was sort of an intermediary a little bit. And yeah, I took on too much too quickly there. And yeah, I learned a lot about how hard it can be also to motivate people to do these hard things. And I know that for me, I'm like whether I was sick or not, I have always been really persistent, and I keep trying, and that's both a failure and a win, I guess, for me, an asset and a drawback. So I guess I'm now trying to take that drive and just share it a little bit, to the extent that it's possible. And I know it's not. I know, yeah, but I know it's hard for anyone. And even now, with all the drive I might have, I mean, like, weeks can go by and I'd be like, oh, I didn't do that thing I need to do to like maintain basic function. I have to kind of like
Yeah.
remind myself. It's like it's another part-time job. Is what it is.
I sometimes, as I said, like it's one of those where you just get back into it, and the old achiever mindset comes back, and
Totally.
you're like, this I'm getting deja vu. Like we don't want to go down this path again. We know where this ends. So but you do
Yeah.
kind of take care of yourself. And as I said, this whole process, you start to realize what situations you want to be in, which people you want to speak to. And
Yeah.
the good thing is with Two Paths, we've met so many cool people. We have people like you who now are going to be helping out. I mean, it's just fantastic, and I think that's what happens, right?
Hmm.
You find people who are in similar situations. You go through something that's just totally out there and wild, and even though we've never met, but we're planning to this year, it's like you have something in common, and that bond
Hmm.
sometimes develops very quickly, as opposed to
Yeah.
people, as you said, you've known years, and
Oh yeah.
and that's what a lot of people will find is when you go through this process and you do come out the other end and you start get your health back. Is I find that you, people get attracted to you. It's like a different type of. It's like I always say you're vibrating at a different energy now, right?
Oh yeah.
Before
Yeah.
you were vibrating at a completely different energy, which wasn't good for you. So then
Or I
what
like to
happened?
say to people that I see the Matrix now, and it's like, oh, that's how it works. Okay, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I get it. Okay, sure. Yeah.
because you've been close to death, like you've literally been on the
Yeah.
knees, right? And you've been there, you've woken up, you never thought you were gonna have a future. So all
Yeah.
you've been stripped down, your ego's been stripped down, it's been
Yeah.
battered, you've been punished, you've been on the floor. But you know what? This is I know, people who are listening, like they probably don't understand this, but this is something that is great in the end, because it does filter
Yeah. Wow.
it does make you realize what's important. It does allow you to take care of yourself, because I guarantee the first thing that
Yeah.
you think of now is when you're doing something is like, okay, how's this going to affect myself? And that's the way
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you have to be, right? Like whereas before you were
Yeah.
probably a bit of a people pleaser, trying to understand like
Oh, I'd do anything. Yeah.
what other people are
Yeah.
thinking, all that kind of shit. Now we don't have that filter anymore. We're just like,
Or
look it
luxury.
or
Yes.
luxury anymore. and
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think that is a gift that comes out of this.
That's true.
It
Yeah, and
it
at
is.
first that was hard to acknowledge. Like I'd hear
Mhm.
people say like, oh, like, later you're gonna feel like this is a gift. And I was like, okay, come on, like, screw you,
Yeah, yeah.
and then now it's like, okay, yeah, I think I get it now.
You do
Yes,
get
yeah,
it.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And so just okay. So just wrapping up, like, what would you? Because a lot of people now have been watching this, right? And they've been asking me for obviously testimonials of people who healed.
hmm,
The reality is I'll be doing more of these. I have a few more lined up, but
hmm,
some people they heal and they don't want to be reminded of this nightmare that they've been through, right? So they don't want to be
right,
so they're
yeah,
kind of like, as you said, like a lot of people will just move on. And
yeah,
say somebody's watching this video for the first time, they've just got visual snow, etc. um what would you advise them to do at, right at the start? And I'll add to that, like what I think. But
okay,
just from a perspective of looking back, okay, don't go into too
yeah,
many details, but more kind of just on a 3,000 foot view, kind of like what would you advise them to do
well, um, well, I mean, the
or
first thing
not
is
to do?
attitude,
So
right?
yeah, yeah,
Well, I mean, it's attitude, and we quickly adjusted that, in my case, right, where I was just like, desperation was next level, and and a part of that attitude is internal mindset, and that's a struggle. It's not going to happen immediately, but like, find a way to reclaim hope, reassure yourself, you know do the affirmations, whatever it takes to kind of get into the right frame of mind first. Tune out the news, tune out Google, tune out AI. It's probably not going to deliver the answers you need. Some of that'll never go away. You might want people are curious, they want more information, fine, but like the hard stuff, the stuff that destabilizes your nervous system further, shut that down and focus on the absolute essentials to start stabilizing your system again. Do things that you do things that you enjoy, if even if it's like one thing for like 5 minutes a day. Start doing things that stabilize your nervous system. This isn't likely going to be forever, and even if something lingers, it's not nearly going to have the same kind of impact on your day-to-day life that it is right now, right? Those are all attitudinal sort of things to start off with, and we already talked about this. Like, get probably you're probably best served to get rid of the heavy drug stuff. Your system's probably overly sensitized, so cut that out of your system to the greatest extent possible. You know, I have some, vascular and metabolic things that emerged partly because I was so sick for so long that I'm now dealing with. But like, that might require a tiny fraction of medication. But get that heavy stuff out of your system, as much as you can. Eat clean, as much as you can. We started with, I think it was juicing, right? Start fixing your gut. Those simple things. I mean, already that's too much probably, but the attitude the attitude thing is definitely, the starting point. And that's super, I don't want to like minimize that. That is super hard when you're desperate and you're being like electrocuted, tortured. Like, I know how hard it is, but that's the starting point. So you might want to add to that, but that's
Yeah, no,
that's
no,
what I
no,
would
that,
do.
that's great. Yeah, it is all about kind of mental attitude, right? Like it's that I've done
Yeah,
some videos on this. It's about living in fear, because fear
yeah,
impacts your immune system, right? Once you're living in a
yeah,
24/7 element of fear, right? That is just going to compound the problem. And going on to
yeah.
Reddit and going on to Facebook and going on to all these
Oh,
different sites is
forget it.
just going to compound fear, because the first thing you're going to
Yeah,
see is it's like a trip advisor review. Somebody's going to come up and said, "Oh, it's not curable. I've had it for 20 years." And I remember
yeah,
those things. It's like, I've had depersonalization for 20 years. I've had tinnitus for 20 years. And
yeah.
your heart would just sink and you would be like,
Oh
"Oh my
God, yeah. It's like,
God."
yeah,
And
confirmation
you're
bias
just
is the
looking,
worst thing.
yeah, it's the worst
Yeah,
bias, right? Because you don't understand what
yeah.
these people are going through, right? They could have other issues, right? They could have like abusive
Well,
relationships. They could be in the
yeah,
worst health. Maybe they're just depressed. You
yeah.
don't understand. But what
And
I
making
would
the wrong choices over and
making the
over
road
again
of
too,
choices,
right?
yeah, maybe
So,
they're on like
yeah,
20 different medications. You don't know, or maybe they're
yeah,
just
probably.
fake, or maybe they've been employed
Yeah,
by the Visual Snow Initiative. You don't
yeah,
freaking know who these
yeah,
people are.
yeah,
They're just people on the other side of an avatar, right? And
yeah,
the reality is you got to understand, okay, is this helping me or is it harming me, right? Is this putting
yeah,
me in fear or is it putting me in a state of hope and love? So that's why I always
yeah,
say is, right, if you're going to watch videos, watch something positive, watch people who've healed, watch people who've,
Yeah.
who are positive about this, because
Yeah, start
it's
listening to, for me, I started listening to, like, functional medicine podcasts, and some of the big names in, like, the healing space. And there's these are such hopeful people who give you, like, quite simple messages. It's like it's like going to the Church of Functional Medicine in the best possible way, I'd say, because there's also, I mean, people might have their own, of faith or spirituality component to this, which is, also
I
important,
think
right? Like
faith is, yeah,
rehe-
it's a very
you know
important thing. Yeah, yeah.
rehearse the positivity, find community, these kinds of things, right? But for that time when I was emerging from this at the beginning, and even I mean, even up until now, if you listen to the news, it puts you in a state of, like, anger and fear. If you listen to something on, functional medicine, healing, whatever, it's like, they talk about gratitude and a good diet, and like these more wholesome kinds of things. So repeat
Hmm.
those things in your
Hmm.
mind, even when you feel like you're being electrocuted 24/7, or whatever the horrifying symptom might be that's just, like, plaguing you for every minute of your life. But those, yeah, that's like a huge starting point.
Yeah, and I think when you're dealing with family and friends and stuff like that, like a lot of people will fall into the trap of just trying to describe, every single symptom they have to
Yeah. Yep.
people, and staring at walls or trying to listen out for their tinnitus, and it doesn't help,
Yeah.
right? And
Well,
this is
and people, like, you know just like going to the news, or like defaulting to, I mean, I used to love, I mean, I teach some political classes here, right? Mostly focus on institutions and economics and stuff. But I mean, so I have to tune into it a little bit. But if it's the same thing, can you could say the same thing about going to family and friends if they got the wrong attitude, right? Or if they invalidate what you're experiencing, and then you feel like you have to, like, battle them by trying to explain in greater detail, and then it causes you to focus more on all these things. And I know it sounds like a cop out, because I remember when people were saying this to me initially as well. I was like, "Screw you! You have no idea. I
Mhm.
don't, like, all I can do is communicate this. Like, that's all I have. You can't see it, so all I can do is communicate it." But then you just sound more insane
Yeah,
because you're like,
totally.
"No, you don't
That's
understand."
that's
It's like,
that's why the first thing I say with my clients, and we have like techniques for that. And when people come to me, is the first thing I'll say is, if you're speaking to your parents or friends or whatever, don't start speaking to them about these symptoms. Just tell them you're
yeah,
going through a personal transformation. You've got some things with your health.
yeah,
That's all you need to know. People don't
yeah.
need to know more than that, right?
No, it
Um,
doesn't lead anywhere productive.
nah,
Like,
it
this is
doesn't.
this is something that you gotta, like, trust us on at this point.
Yeah,
I'm a pretty open person, and I'm quite okay sharing everything with people. But when it comes to this, just don't. It doesn't help. It's just like having a VPN for your, I don't know, financial transactions or something. It's like, just don't do that. Don't
yeah.
share it with the world. It's not going to help you. So yeah,
And the symptoms, as I said, the symptoms can be weird and wonderful. Everybody's like, okay, do you see this or do you see that, or do you hear this or do you hear that, right? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
there's so
yeah,
many different things that are coming up now, like in terms of, I have patients who are coming on with all sorts of weird and wonderful symptoms that I didn't know even
mm,
existed, right? And it's just,
yeah.
just the world we live in. And as I said to you, it
Yeah,
goes back to the fact that, you know, there is obviously a lot of manipulation going on in the world. We don't know what's being created. We don't know what's
yeah,
happening, right?
yeah.
The reality is we don't know what's
No,
inside
no.
us, right? We don't know what the
Glyphosate, yeah,
cause of all
yeah,
these things are, right? Whether it's
yeah,
planned or what or whatever. But the reality is if you're putting pressure on yourself, and this is what I say, is the key thing is fear, right? If you're operating
yeah,
from a place of fear, your own cells are creating a toxic
yeah.
burden in your body. Your own
Cell
cells
danger
are
response, right?
exactly,
Cell
yeah.
danger response.
You're
Yeah,
creating like a toxic. So the first thing I always say is, and that's what we work on. That's what I worked on with you, which was harder, obviously, because you had the medications that were, you know,
yeah.
adding to that like a million times, like, because
Oh, we glossed over this, but the withdrawal was hell too, right? So
oh
there's,
man, it
like,
was,
you're going from hell to hell, and
yeah.
and you know, so that's hard too. But anyway, yeah, like, but it's best to get as many toxins out of your system as possible so you can level them up,
Okay,
right?
and so
Yeah,
just on the program itself, what I always say, and this is to people, obviously it's something for life, right? Like what you've
yeah,
been taught in the program, you
yeah,
now will do for life, like I do for life,
Yep.
because
Oh
we
yeah,
know
it's
what's
routine
happening.
now.
We know what's
Mm,
happening in the atmosphere. We don't know what the next
mm.
pandemic's going to be, right? We don't know what kind of
Right.
scientific experiments at Wuhan they're doing, right? We don't know what they're putting
Yeah.
in our food supply. We don't know what's in the air. We
Right.
don't know how 5G is affecting us, right? So
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
as I always say, the two pass program that I created was it's a toolkit for life. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everybody has to be doing some form of detoxification, right?
Oh yeah. It's like
During
it's
it's essential. It's not an
yeah.
option anymore. I feel like
It's like
it's an
going to the
essential.
grocery store now. It's like it's like taking a walk. You got to do this thing.
You've
Yeah.
got to do this thing, and it's not
Yeah.
enough to just do a juice cleanse or do,
No. Go for a walk and a
you
juice
go
cleanse.
for a
No.
walk. It's you have to go deep, because as
Yeah.
I said, like we have all sorts of stuff festering inside us, and as I said,
Yeah.
that I don't take my word for it. Just look at the uptick in disease. Every
Oh
disease
yeah.
is up,
Yeah.
thousands of percent in
Well,
young people.
I was talking to at one point in this journey, I was like, I have never given up on the gut health thing. I've been doing, like crazy gut stuff ever since we started. And at one point, I was talking to another practitioner, and she's a big name in the States, and she said, I have no idea exactly what's going on right now, but something is deeply wrong.
Yeah,
Uh, she'd been practicing for 20 years, and she's like, things are changing fast, and I can't pinpoint any one thing. Which is also, by the way, when you go to Reddit or whatever, it's not going to give you the answer because you don't. It's not one thing, right?
no,
Um,
it's
but
false.
but she confirmed. She's like, you're not crazy. Something's wrong. Let's help each other. Was sort of the result. So yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's just there's not one thing.
yeah. So anyway, let's wrap this up now, James. Look, man, I really
Okay.
appreciate your time. I hope your people who've been listening to this, they can relate to the stories that we have. It
Yeah.
seems like a lot of people go through the same hell.
Yeah.
But you got two people here who have come out the other side, and
Hmm.
I mean, I always say healing never stops, right? Like there's no
Right.
end to healing, right? We're always healing. Like as we get older, there's gonna be always things that we're healing from.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think, with the program and things that we've been through, like to heal from what we did, right? It gives us hope of of I always say that the root cause of all disease is from the stuff that we dealt with. So I think, you know,
Mhm.
as we get older, the techniques that we use and the stuff that we've learned from the program, it's going to stand us in good stead, right? And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, what they're going through right now is, you know these people that who you see on Instagram, you see on TikTok, and living great lives, and this is a message for people out there as well. Like your friends probably drinking, doing stuff, and you're kind of wondering like, oh my god, why am I stuck with this? And this is not to be like wishing it or whatever. Like it's just the reality of the situation. Is a lot of these people are going to be dealing with their own shit very soon, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's inevitable. It's inevitable, right? If they don't,
Everyone has to cross the Rubicon at some point. Yeah.
yeah, and people are having to cross it a lot earlier now
Yeah.
because of the world that we live in. So
Yeah.
it's important. I always say to people who come to the program, it's a blessing because you're able to resolve these things. You're able to work on yourself now and learn these things
Mhm.
rather than later on down the line when stuff might hit you and it's too late, right?
Mm.
And you go to the doctors, they put you on some sort of, because at the end of the day, you have the opportunity to work on yourself, and your
Mhm.
body's giving you signs, it's giving you signals that it needs care, it needs attention, right? Don't ignore those signs. Put the work in now and don't delay, right?
Yeah.
Because things, as you know, the alarm bells just get bigger and bigger. And I know that
Yeah.
I had these alarm bells going on for years and I just ignored them,
Yeah.
right? Because I
Yeah.
was I
Sure.
was
Yeah.
I was chasing, power, respect, money,
Hmm.
myself, all these kind of things that we're all chasing, we're all taught to chase. And I always
Yeah.
delayed take self-care. I'll always put it off to the next year, next year, next year.
Yeah.
But I think that's what people are starting to realize now, that they have to start putting themselves first. Otherwise,
Yeah.
and then someone could be a very good phrase to me. It was like, when you're healthy, you've got loads of dreams. When you're sick, you
Mm-mm.
only have one dream.
One dream. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's a good way to end um, the podcast, the video, whatever you want to call this.
Yeah.
So guys, anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. We'll be coming back with some more testimonials, and as I said, James is joining the team now, so he will be helping us support clients and making some video content as well. But anyway, buddy, I will catch you next time. Thanks again for sharing your story.
Pleasure.
All right, take
Always
care, buddy.
a pleasure. Thank you.
Catch you later, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye.